The politics of the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, Ipod, returned to Uganda's political landscape when NUP, Uganda's largest opposition party, announced they were not joining the political arrangement. The party claimed they didn't see any reasonable way to negotiate Museveni out of power. NUP's decision is in line with that of their predecessor, the Forum for Democratic Change, which also refused to join, reasoning that Ipod is only used by the regime to legitimize itself.
It gave Museveni cover. He now started telling everybody, you guys, there is a dialogue under Ipod, and therefore Ipod now became a new shield for a national dialogue.
What the present regime has done is to use Ipod to justify its brutality.
With the two giants not ready to be part of Ipod, means that NRM might remain on the dancing floor only with the bridesmaids of DP, UPC, and a host of other little-known players.
We may have a plan B. That is all well, but we don't have a country B.
But first things first, why was Ipod formed in the first place? Can it account for its existence in the last 10 years? Who loses and who gains with or without Ipod in the country's political landscape?
Whichever party is in the majority in parliament in terms of opposition, it can steer the opposition without Ipod.
In previous Ipod summits, leaders have made resolutions like increasing funding for political parties, equal sharing of funds during an election year, adopting regulations for the implementation of the Public Order Management Act, POMA, and creating and respecting a leveled and fair political ground. Out of all these resolutions, only the increase of funding for political parties from 10 to 35 billion has been implemented. The rest, like the Public Order Management Act, have since been shelved and never tabled before Parliament.
A platform that has no accountability mechanism, that has no reprimands or sanctions if decisions are not made, I would not take it seriously.
We're asking these questions and we need answers to be supplied before we are conscripted into, into a framework that has no output.
On the sidelines, the Blue Camp is not sleeping. As a party that has suffered with the exodus of its mighty members to either the NRM or NUP, it was time to fill the vacant positions and move on.
I, Lukwago Elias.
One of those who ate big was Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago, who was appointed to fill the position previously held by Joyce Sebugwao as Vice President for Buganda Region. Lukwago's appointment comes at a time when NUP has positioned itself as the darling of the region. The question is, can Lukwago change the status quo that has seen even the ruling NRM spend sleepless nights wondering how they can ever recapture the region? This is the Frontline.
Frontline.
A very good evening and welcome to the NBS Frontline this Thursday night. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi, and like you heard in the trigger, we're discussing issues within the Inter-Party Dialogue, Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, Ipod, which the biggest party in opposition, the National Unity Platform, says it will not join. I think you must have seen the leader of opposition in Parliament making the position clear. The question tonight we're asking, is NUP's position on Ipod one of convenience or one out of principle? We have an all-male panel, so starting from the extreme end, from the Democratic Party, its own President General and the frontliner, Norbert Mao, commonly referred to as Chairman Mao. That somehow kind of sticks. Mr. Norbert Mao, very nice to have you on the front line.
Thank you, Charles.
We have from the National Resistance Movement and from the government of Uganda, Ofono Opondo, he's a frontliner, and leads the Uganda Government Media Center. Mr. Ofono Opondo, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
We have from the Forum for Democratic Change, newly sworn in, Deputy President, also Mayor of Kampala Capital City Authority, Lord Mayor, the Honorable Elias Lukwago. Salongo.
I don't know why O was sheepishly laughing at me when you were introducing me.
I said, you are brand new, so yeah.
Anyway, good evening, viewers. Good evening, panelists. I'm pleased to be part of this show.
We have from the National Unity Platform, Secretary General Lewis David Rubongaya.
Good evening to all Ugandans watching us, and very happy to be here.
And we have from the institution that hosts the Secretariat of the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, Ipod, Country Director of the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy, NIMD, Frank Rusa Nyakana. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers. Nice to be here with the panelists.
Gentlemen, the discussion is about the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, Ipod, which seems to be at this point in time teetering on the brink, because NUP, which has the majority of members of parliament in the opposition, has said it will not join that dialogue. It thinks it is a tool for the national resistance movement to justify itself. Let's start with a bit of the background of Ipod and where we are, and the support it's been getting from NIMD. Frank Rusa, I want to start with you. Where are we coming from to reach where we are at the moment in terms of dialoguing amongst political parties under the Ipod arrangement?
Yeah, thank you so much, Charles. It's really an honor to be on this show, especially my maiden time with you as the moderator. So it's nice. Thank you for inviting me, these very distinguished leaders, to discuss what I think is a very important subject that is of extreme importance to our country. So a little bit of background is that, as we all know, our country chose the multi-party system of governance in a referendum in the year 2005. After that, with the elections in 2006, we see our first multi-party parliament after a very long time. And I think the leaders then thought it wise to start an inter-party dialogue platform. The whole idea being that they could foster some degree of cooperation side by side with the usual political competition that comes with multi-party politics, for purposes of strengthening the multi-party system, resolving problems that they might get as political parties, and also discussing other issues, pertinent issues. So they approached our organization, the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy, in The Hague, the political parties here then, led by their respective secretary generals. And we had done this multi-party platform in a number of countries. We had been in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Ghana, and a couple of other countries. Actually, when we came to Uganda, we spoke with the political leaders here. We had some study trips to Ghana, to Kenya, and to other places to see how multi-party dialogue forums function. And they liked the idea, and the political parties, the 6 political parties in the 8th Parliament in 2010, in February, signed the first Ipod Memorandum of Understanding. Ipod is a voluntary organization that survives and thrives on the goodwill of its members. The aspirations then, and I still think the aspirations now of some of the members, were to use this platform to deepen democracy and to give an opportunity to political parties to perform their functions better, to be more responsive to the needs of their voters and stuff like this. However, over the years, like any organization that is growing, that is going through a number of changes, there have been quite a number of challenges. There have been some successes, there have been some challenges, and I would like to say that what I consider to be one of the biggest achievements of this platform is, first and foremost, its very existence. That we have a space where political parties can meet regularly and have conversations about this country is an important platform to have. So the first MOU was signed in 2010 and it ended in 2015 December. Then went to the 2016 election, which had, as we all remember how it went. After that election, there was a debate. Should we continue the dialogue? Should we stop the dialogue? For us, as the facilitators of the dialogue, we tried to convince, we tried to nudge the political parties and encourage them to continue this dialogue platform because there are a number of other outstanding issues. So in 2017, all the 4 political parties that were represented in the 9th Parliament signed another MOU, which runs up to December 2021, this year. And they again engaged us as the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy to continue providing the Secretariat. So you will remember that the Justice Forum did not have members of parliament at the beginning of the 10th parliament, but along the way they managed to win a seat through an Ebujiri by-election, and the Honorable Osman Batsaliora came to parliament, and because of that, the other members of Ipod who were signatories to the MOU chose to invite Gemma to join the platform, and Gemma agreed and joined in October. Now, because there have been new members of parliament joining with the 11th parliament during the subsistence of the Ipod Memorandum of Understanding, which is set to expire in December, again, the sitting members of Ipod thought it wise to inform the new eligible parties, namely the National Unity Platform and the People's Progressive Party, to consider joining Ipod. Especially at a time like this when a conversation is going to start about what a new dialogue framework should look like. So NUP, a letter was written to them, and the Secretary General of NUP replied to us.
Who wrote to NUP?
As Executive Secretary of Ipod. As the Country Director of NIMD, we also act as the Secretariat of Ipod. So we wrote a letter to NUP informing them of their eligibility to join and what Ipod is about, and ask them to express interest so that if they do want to join, then we make preparations to have them join formally. And their response was that for a number of reasons which you have talked about a lot in the media, they felt this was not the opportune time to come to Ipod because of a number of reasons, and I think the Secretary General is here. He will raise those. And so this letter has been received. The contents have been shared with the other political parties, the member political parties right now. And I think this is now the question on whether or not, as you said, we are now asking ourselves, where do we go from here? But let me just say this as I conclude, that as facilitators of the dialogue and watching what has happened over the years in this forum, I think that this is a very important forum. First, it is the one of its kind. In our country today, we do not have many spaces where political leaders can meet and discuss the tough issues of the day. Ipod is still one, I think it's the only one we have for the political parties. So it's very important in that regard. And I also think that NUP being the leaders of opposition in parliament, they have a big mandate from the people of Uganda. And I think this would be an opportunity for them to put on the table what it is that they would like to see resolved, to resolve some of the issues. NUP has expressed a concern about a number of things. From our view as the facilitators of the dialogue, I think that the views that NUP has presented could actually form the minimum agenda for a discussion, to say that if we are going to come in a dialogue, these are the critical things that we think need to be discussed. And then maybe it is at that point that we can say that either there's been a disagreement or something, but I think it is necessary to give dialogue a chance. But for now, let me leave it at that. That's the background.
Let me jump quickly to Norbert Mao. You were there at the beginning of Ipod, and you're still around.
No.
You weren't?
I wasn't there at the beginning.
You weren't a member of the Democratic Party?
You are saying I was there at the beginning.
Yes, because your party...
I was the president.
No, your party has been party to Ipod since its foundation, and now you're the President General.
You were there at the beginning of Ipod as a Ugandan alive.
Of course I was.
Is that what you're meaning?
No, I'm meaning you as a political party.
No.
You represent your party here, don't you?
No.
And you're the President General of that political party.
I think you need to know that the executive committee that signed the MOU was led by the late John Sebana Kizito. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you should talk about our then National Legal Advisor, the Lord Mayor. He was the one who was a part of the leadership of DP when we founded Ipod, let me say, because we didn't join, we founded it.
I appreciate that you
So now put the question correctly.
Yes, I appreciate that you say when we founded, and that's the context with which I was coming to you. You've watched the journey of Ipod. Just 10 years old, and it's teetering on the brink at the moment.
I think I know the media, they love words. I see there Ipod threatened as no pulls out. How do you pull out when you have never been in? Surely media, help us also. Whoever is behind that screen, please type something which is correct. You can't pull out when you have never joined. So, but
Let me correct that impression. It's the law which says you were a member, then you opt out. It's the arrangement they make.
No, there's no law. Ipod actually is an informal...
The MOU.
No, MOU is not a law passed by Parliament. Anyway, a lot of ignorant people have been talking about Ipod.
Let's hear from the informed people of Ipod. And that
Ipod is not about,
now.
it's not, its membership is political parties, but it's not just about political parties. It's about Uganda. So, you know, yesterday I was at a function, and I said something I've been thinking about for a very long time. And I studied the mood of those who were present, because it was a gathering. So I said, Uganda is not a democracy. So those who are NRM said, no, 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 how can you say that? Then I said, Uganda is not a dictatorship. Then they cheered. I said, great. Then I said, it's not a democracy because how do you say you have a democracy when people are selling their votes for 500 shillings? When you have the kind of harassment, distortions during elections. Then I said, how do you say you have a dictatorship when the dictatorship cannot get anything done? A dictatorship is supposed to compel people. People are supposed to be trembling. When the dictatorship says, we want to see this, don't invade wetlands. People shouldn't go to wetlands. But when they are told not to go to wetlands, it's as if they are being invited. They say, don't cut trees. Then I told them that let me tell you what Uganda is. Uganda is a hypocrisy. And the system we have actually needs to be dismantled. We build something new, which is based on reality, not the kind of hypocrisy that we are talking about. So these are my opinions. So those who founded Ipod wanted a platform. Now, if Ipod is a cure, then what's the disease? I never get tired of quoting the Reverend Father Kanyike, who told us that he went to America and found people wearing T-shirts on which were the words, Jesus is the answer. And he asked, what's the question? So, if Ipod is the answer, then what's the question? The question is, how do we put an end to the cycle of violent changes? Why don't people who disagree find a forum where they can talk? Just imagine if in 1966, the then president of Uganda and the prime minister were able to talk. Imagine all the missed opportunities. So Ipod is an attempt. Sometimes I think many people are hesitant to celebrate effort. They are more interested in results. I'm one of those who believe that we should celebrate some efforts also. So our politics, to quote George W. Bush's speech on September 11th, he said that American politics has become a naked appeal to fear, hatred, and resentment. So it is now also something very Ugandan to appeal to people's hatred, people's fear, people's resentment. So Ipod is an attempt to paint a picture of a collective future.
So as leader of one of the oldest political parties that's been...
The oldest in Uganda.
The oldest in Uganda, that's been involved in every effort to dialogue, to cooperate, yes, some disagreements here and there. You think that 10 years down the road, Ipod, as an attempt, is still on the journey to delivering that
definitely,
space for...
Most definitely. And the effort called Ipod, number one, it is a platform where you go and say what you want. You don't have to agree. you don't talk about the things you disagree over, because there are other platforms. You can go to parliament, you can go to the district councils, you can come to the media. Ipod is not a substitute for anything. So I think sometimes people unfairly expect too much of Ipod. Ipod is like, let me see, I can compare it to the Interreligious Council of Uganda. It brings the Orthodox, Muslims, Catholics, Protestants, the born-agains. Now, if somebody says, I'm not going to sit with those who eat pork, then you have a problem. You must focus on the battle against Satan, the manifestation of evil. I think it must have an agenda which is agreed upon. It doesn't mean there are no disagreements.
Who in your view, Mr. Mao, is the Satan of politics in this country?
I have not. The Satan of politics is hatred, fear, resentment, poverty, violence, abuse of human rights. That's what we are talking about.
And someone will ask, how far have you gone in dealing with that Satan over the last 10 years under Ipod?
Number one, the parties themselves are weak. So Ipod is supposed to strengthen the institutional capacities of the parties. You are talking as if the parties are actually very strong. The building blocks of Ipod themselves.
I think you're answering a different question.
No.
Yes.
You are saying how far have you gone?
Yes.
And I'm telling you.
And you're giving reasons, not of how far. You are not talking about how far you have gone. You're saying you're giving reasons of why you have not gone there anywhere.
No. The Ipod has contributed to strengthening the institutional capacities of these parties that are members. When I talk about institutional capacity, I mean things as basic as establishing accounting systems. Because if you can't be accountable in a political party, how will you be accountable in government?
Okay.
Number two, to, for instance, have policy analysts. Apart from going to talk about potholes in our constituencies, what are the policies that we are proposing and advocating for? So by having that policy analysts, the parties were helped. Number three, the parties have also had the opportunity to send delegations to compare how other countries are struggling. Democracy is a journey. I don't even think there's any country that has arrived yet. There are those who are further away. But the thorniest issue, and where Ipod is justifiably criticized, is to implement some of the decisions. I'll mention those that are justifiable criticisms. The Public Order Management Act. The law requires that there should be regulations. The absence of regulations has given the police a blank check to do whatever they want in the gray areas of that law. As an Ipod, we agreed the task is with the office of the Prime Minister. The government is dragging its foot. So there's frustration. Number two, electoral reforms. There have been clear proposals from Ipod itself about making our elections freer and fairer. When those proposals do not translate into legislation in Parliament, proposals are ignored, there is frustration. The third one is human rights abuses. When there is human rights abuse, and we are always talking about protection of human rights, there is frustration. So the criticism, many of the criticisms against Ipod are justifiable.
Okay.
But to say Ipod is useless, that definitely is totally unjustified.
Mr. Fonopondo, Chairman Mao just talks about how Ipod hasn't been helpful on the key issues they want to dialogue on, but he says it's justifiable. Who cares whether you have a platform, especially for a party that is the majority like yours? You control parliament, you control local government positions, you have the presidency. Who cares if there is a dialogue, a platform for dialogue?
Well, I have not had the opportunity to listen to the reasons, valid or otherwise, why NOP is saying they will not participate.
No, before you go to NOP, we are talking about Ipod and its relevance itself. We'll go to NOP in a moment.
Well, first of all, we run this country by the Constitution, but also common sense. What does the Constitution say about political interaction? We have created formal institutions of the country. We have also created formal institutions of the state. And we have created formal institutions of government, where we expect interactions between contending trends in the country to participate in. Do those contending trends, or are they participating in those formal institutions? My answer is in the affirmative, that yes, they do. They participate in parliament, they participate in local councils, they participate in other meetings, perhaps convened by civil society organizations or NGOs, even when there are very, very contentious issues. In that parliament, the same people who are saying they can't meet in Ipod are already meeting in parliament. Don't we have the same issues they are trying to avoid in Ipod in parliament? So why are they not avoiding parliament? So to me, the fact that Ipod has not achieved 100% is not an excuse for anybody to say we won't participate. Is it the first time? No. I've been a little longer around than I think the people on this show today. When the NRM captured power, it said we want to have some form of elections in '87. There were groups that refused completely to participate in the LC elections and to participate in the expanded NRC in '89 February. UPC in particular, which had been overthrown earlier on, at that time led by somebody called Iron Lady, Cecilia Ogwal. She said UPC will not participate in anything political with the NRM. She described the NRM at that time as monolithic dictatorship led by gunmen. Did that stop the country from gradually implementing the democratic process? At that time, I think we had about 3,000 or more people from eastern and northern Uganda who had been arrested and brought to Luzira as lodgers. I think they were held for a year or two. 3 years. 3 years as lodgers. They didn't see any court of law. They were described as lodgers. Did the people of northern Uganda or leaders in northern Uganda refuse? Some refused, some accepted to participate in the political process. Then immediately the NRM said, let us constitute the Human Rights Commission under Justice O'Day. There were people who were summoned by commission order. They refused to turn up. Some came to the commission and just kept quiet. Others, like the late Paul Mwanga, who had been the vice president, came and simply insulted the commission. Following that commission, Human Rights of O'Day, Justice O'Day, may his soul rest in eternal peace, the NRM then enacted the Odoki Commission to go around the country to solicit views of Ugandans as to whether we could write a new constitution. Again, the UPC led by Honorable Cecilia Ogwal, at that time she was not yet honorable. She was not yet in parliament. She said UPC will not submit its views to the Odoki Commission established by the gunmen. She said the 1967 constitution was valid, was legitimate, was the best. UPC, and if you go on that draft, UPC as a political party never submitted its views. Okay? Milton Obote from Lusaka even prevented UPC members in writing from participating in the CA elections. By that time, 1994, Cecile Ogwari had discovered that her intransigence was not helping. She then ran to participate in the CA election, which she won.
She defied her party president.
Yes, and she was promptly dismissed by Obote on that account. That's how Dr. James Rwanyarare replaced her as chairman of UPC Presidential Commission. So this is not a new phenomenon. We have had this before. The fact that we have not obeyed all the 10 commandments of God does not mean we don't go for prayers, for those of you who want to go for prayers. In fact, majority of the world still go for prayers. The world being sinful, notwithstanding. And so I want to extrapolate that into politics. The fact that Ipod, this country is in search of direction, especially direction for harmonious discourse. And therefore, whoever comes with it, I think we should give the benefit of doubt. So I am not one of those who says, like now, okay, our parliament. Has our parliament achieved everything we want? No. Can we refuse to participate in the political process that produces parliament? No. You remember there were people here who said they will not participate in elections. In 1996, when Dr. Semogora was defeated, he directed all the DP prospective candidates, parliamentary candidates, not to participate. Consequently, DP did, at that time, did not support the people from DP persuasion who participated in the 1996 parliamentary election. Defied Semogora. But did that prevent?
Were there political parties at that time?
I am saying from DP persuasion. You see, there is a substance, there is a form. Although we said that election was on individual merit, the truth is that people used their political belonging in parties to campaign for those elections. So there is a form and there is a substance. Fast forward.
Dr. Semogora ran as a presidential candidate.
96.
Yes.
But you remember, presidential election and parliamentary elections were being run on different days.
Yes.
So once he lost, he said he had been cheated. He even went to court and said, DP people don't go. That's actually how Honorable Damian Ruvega left his seat in Ruvaga and Ruchambs came in. That's how Sebana, that's how Mr. Mutiaba came in, and so on and so forth. In the most recent incidences, what has FDC been saying? You remember, for the last 2 years, last 2 cycles of election, each time we finish election, FDC says they have been cheated, they don't recognize the government, they are going to form a people's government. They have refused to recognize, according to them. But the people who win seats on FDC ticket for parliament and the local councils and LC5, all of them go and join. In a sense, legitimizing, actually acknowledging that actually there is a government, there's a group that has won, and there's a group that has lost. And so these antics you had asked, is it for convenience? I suspect it is for convenience.
Okay.
In the last 2 years, FDC, for example, said they will not go to Ipod summit, they will not participate in Ipod activities. But now records exist, which shows that FDC, led by Engineer Moriat and Ndarama Secretary General, have actually been participating in the low-key activities of Ipod, even picking funding. But when it comes to attending the summit, where they are going to meet Mr. Museveni, the chairman of NRM and president of Uganda, then they shy away. My suspicion is they know if they go to meet Museveni, perhaps, they will not successfully raise the issues they are raising because some of them are flimsy, some of them are valid, but they don't have credible evidence to sustain an argument, and so they cut.
That's a suspicion. Let me come
so they cut, they don't go. So for me, the fact that we have not achieved, or the fact that they are, in fact, because they are contentious matters, is the more reason I should go and face my adversary.
Okay. I want to come to Arias Lukwago, and then I'll come to David Lewis Rubangoya to crown this off. Honorable Lukwago, you participated, like Mao said at the beginning, you're chief legal advisor to the Democratic Party in 2009 when the discussions on Ipod started. Yep. Now you're a deputy president of the Forum for Democratic Change, and you've listened to the gentleman talk about Ipod and why it's important, and especially the point that Ofono Opondo just finished with. You've not been participating in summit meetings. So you started the defiance against Ipod even before NUP came into existence. Does Ipod serve any purpose, from what you have listened to from the other gentlemen here, serve any purpose that NUP, for example, you would say is making a mistake to say it doesn't want to participate?
To begin with, permit me to put a disclaimer that the views I am presenting here may not necessarily represent the position of the party, because I'm sure that's what you wanted to get out of me. Neither are they going to represent the National Executive Committee of DP then, when I was still the National Legal Advisor. They are entirely mine, and I'm here in that capacity. That said, I've attentively listened to the three gentlemen. I'm particularly intrigued by the submissions of my brother Frank Rusa and Honorable Nobati Mao. My sense of judgment tells me they are talking about a totally different platform, not Ipod. When they speak about the mandate of Ipod, I advise them to go back and look at the Constitution, they look at the Political Parties and Organizations Act. They are specific, actually they are talking about the National Consultative Forum of Political Parties.
Which is a different entity.
It's a totally different entity. When you hear things like harmonization of contradictions, minimizing conflicts amongst political parties, interfacing and interacting on deepening democracy, that's the mandate of the National Consultative Forum. It has never been the mission and vision of Ipod. Ipod was meant to be a temporary arrangement, a dialogue, and by their nature, dialogues are time-bound, and they are tailor-made. They are suited to a particular environment. They are tackling a particular aspect. You can't have a forum for dialogue, like he has given the example of the interreligious. It is not a forum for dialoguing to resolve particular sticking issues. That's a forum to address different issues. So in this particular case, the National Consultative Forum has been killed, and it's a statutory body. They have instead turned this into a permanent forum, which was never the original mission and ideal. I personally participated in the formative processes leading to the establishment of Ipod. Not constructively, in that I was a member of the National Executive Party, of National Executive Committee of DP, but physically I was there. We benchmarked it in Ghana. I was there personally. I was on the team that went to Ghana together with a few other members of DP who represented the party. I think the government side, the NRM side rather, was led by Honorable Migereko and others who were there. CP with the Ruchams. I don't recall who represented the UPC. We were all there. So from the discussion, and I'm surprised my brother here, Rusa, is making a statement which is factually wrong. is alleging that parties approached NIMD, the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy. No, actually, that wasn't the case. NIMD volunteered. Nobody moved them to intervene. They volunteered on the heels of a success story in Ghana because they facilitated the transition in Ghana. Ghana wrote their constitution in 1992. At that time, they had a military junta led by the late Jerry Rawlings. They were supposed to have elections in 1994. They boycotted, the opposition political parties boycotted. And Jerry Rawlings is also like our so-called revolutionary here, General Museveni, wanted to entrench that doctrine of revolutionary ideas in their constitution and body politic. And the people of Ghana said no. They boycotted the election, and there was a standoff. So Ghana was on the brink of becoming a pariah or a failed state, and NIMD intervened. In their constitution, they had 2 terms of 4 years each, and his term was supposed to end in 1998. Rawlings wanted to amend the constitution and lift term limits. With the intervention of NIMD, different stakeholders came on a round table, and they brought force to bear on Rawlings. He abandoned the idea of amending the constitution. That's how they engendered a new political dispensation. And we were all inspired by that when NIMD came on board and said, you approached us. So we traveled all the way to Ghana. They facilitated the entire process. They paid us. They brought, even Jerry Rawlings himself came and addressed us. Kufuor, by that time, who succeeded? Kufuor, as a civilian president, who succeeded, Jerry Rawlings came, gave us his experience, and we were all inspired. So we said that should inform the transition processes in Uganda, the Ghanaian experience. That was never to happen. And that's why I'm saying the MOU was signed in 2010. The benchmarking was 2009. And hardly had the ink in the document dried than NRM reneged on their commitments. 2010. That time I was the Shadow Attorney General and Minister for Constitutional Affairs. I was entrusted with the duty of handling, because that was the first commitment that was made. We had a series of engagements. The last one was held at Hotel Africana, or rather Serena in Chigo. The likes of Rugundana were there, and many others. By that time, the Prime Minister was in Svambi. They were at Chiduma, Adolf Mwesigye. We sat down, we all agreed on a raft of amendments to usher in a new democratic transition.
Electoral law reform.
Electoral reforms, starting with the Constitution. But these people rejected, because the process is bills emanate from cabinet. But they refused to sponsor even a single bill. They said, no, you'll bring let's get these amendments, since they are generated outside this process known by government. When they come on table for us, we shall concede. But I got a shock of my life, together with my colleagues who were part of that process. When we presented the amendments, the Right Honorable Sekandi, who was the speaker, then said, those are your talking notes. Every time I talk about this issue, I speak with a passion, with broken promises, with frustrations because of those broken promises. So that's when it dawned on us that this thing was a farce from the word go, with all due respect. Personally, it dawned on me that it was a farce, considering what I observed in Parliament at that time. And NRM, since then, they have taken it as a forum for hoodwinking Ugandans and entrenching a personal rule. And also it's for cosmetic purposes. What am I talking about? The mission and vision and agenda of Ipod was to usher in a transition, a peaceful transition from a military regime to a truly democratic multi-party dispensation. That was the idea. Number one, how do you end a military regime? How do you bring to an end a military rule? That was the original idea. Like it happened in Ghana, the Jerry Rawlings rule. So here, instead, this one's, you know, a person who does a massage, you know what they do? They can get your hand, twist it around, turn it like this. You feel a lot of pain. But they don't intend to break your arms. No, they want to make you strong. So that's what Ipod has been doing. No wonder Mr. Museveni treats it as if it doesn't. I was shocked and I was really, I sympathized with you, my brother, Honorable. And I admire your patience. For me, I don't have it. To sit on the day of the summit in Munyonyo, when Mr. Museveni had blocked that day, he knew he was going to meet his equals because he was not coming as president, he was coming as a chairman of a party. And you wait from 9 a.m. when Mr. Museveni was supposed to report, till 9 p.m., a whole day, waiting for a person who is ostensibly supposed to be your equal. I saw my brother, Honorable Dob, I kept on, he was there in chairs, yawning, reading newspapers cover to cover, and doing, oh my God, how could you embarrass us like that? Honestly speaking. So that's how Mr. Museveni treats this Ipod. The second aspect of Ipod was to ensure that we have a new constitutional order that would engender, again, free and fair competition in this country. A new constitutional order. Because at that time, Mr. Museveni had removed the safeguards we had in the Constitution, the term limits. 10 years down the road, even the little safety nets we still had in the Constitution have been removed under the watch.
But you had sat through a second MOU and signed it.
No, the first MOU we signed was 2010.
2010.
I was party to that.
Yes, the second MOU.
The second MOU, that's when, for me, I told the colleagues, by that time, I was treated as a renegade in my party. And I think in 2015, you are aware, Honorable Norbert Mao was now the president. And some of us were not within the party structures and wouldn't influence any decision. 2015, at that time. So, by that time, we had started speaking out against Ipod and say, look here, Ipod has become more variability than an asset.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is where, now, 2017, Mr. Museveni removes the only safeguard we had against entrenching a life presidents. That is the age limit. And under your watch. And you were there accompanying him. So it's dangerous. Finally, we are saying right now, there should be an audit. Honorable, my brother Frank Arosa. I don't know whether you carry out a baseline survey and assess what you have achieved.
Let's come to those.
And they have resorted now, let me conclude this. They veered off the main thrust of the forum and the core mandate to peripheral issues. The issues they are talking about are peripheral in nature. That we sit and agree on funds, for example. In the summit where they sat, they said, let's increase the vote from 20 billion to 30 billion. And when actually that was realized, because that's, I think, the only achievement of Ipod, NRM went away with the 12 billion out of 20, leaving other parties with only 8 billion. Can I consider that as an achievement? Certainly not. I conclude by saying Ipod ought to have wound up long time ago. It's a liability. It is an entity we don't need.
Okay. David Lewis Rwangoya, you haven't even joined Ipod as yet. You have rejected the invitation to join Ipod. You are a new political party on the block. You control majority in parliament now on the opposition side. And you're not exploring avenues for dialoguing with the other political parties. What is your reason for not embracing the Ipod idea?
Yeah, first of all, I think a lot has been said on this platform. But you do not need to, first of all, join Ipod for you to understand that it has not served the purpose for which it was established, and that it is a joke, for lack of a better word. My brother Joel, our spokesperson this week, made a comment and said that, you know, you don't need to first be part of a failing school in order for you to realize that actually this school is not up to the task. If you are given an option to take your kids to a certain school, you have to look at the track record. You need to look at a scorecard. When Mr. Frank Rusa wrote a letter addressed to me, he indicated the mission of Ipod in that very letter. And he indicated that the objective, among others, of Ipod is to deepen multi-party democracy in Uganda. And for the past 10 years of Ipod's existence in Uganda, you'll agree with me that multi-party democracy has just been on a downward spiral. And that, you know, the democratic space continues to shrink every other day that passes. So why should we be part of a platform which has not achieved its core mandate, not even 1% of it, in my view, because I think political parties should be allowed to operate. That is why Ipod, in my view, should be there even to talk about it. But where you cannot go and open an office in a certain district, where a political party cannot go and carry out activities, mobilization activities. You saw the kind of election we just had, the worst in our history, violent, irregular, name it. And you have Ipod. They go and torture people, pluck out their fingernails, do all sorts of things to them, and then come. General Museveni comes and he wants to shake hands with you after commanding the most egregious violations that we have witnessed in a very long history in this country. So we thought that it's not wise for us to join a platform of that nature. I will say that Ipod, the original idea behind Ipod, was a good one. Just like other institutions in this country, you have the judiciary, you have parliament, you have all these other institutions. But as long as you live in a dictatorial regime, where the dictator hovers over all institutions, then you cannot say that these institutions are going to be able to serve their purpose. So for me, I do not even want to criticize Mr. Frank here, but I want to sympathize with him. Because I think that the institution he leads has been a victim of a dictatorial regime which has eroded all institutions, and Ipod has not been spared. I will remind you that the first time I heard him mention about Ipod, General Museveni was at the height of the Arua debacle, after Honorable Chagulanyi had been arrested, tortured, and people had been killed on the streets of Kampala. When he addressed the people and people asked him, are you willing to dialogue? He said, we have Ipod. And he reminded the Prime Minister, why don't we reawaken this whole idea of Ipod? And from that time, you've seen every time there's a contradiction, people are killed, they say we have Ipod. So that's why we're saying that Ipod is used to sanitize an illegitimate regime that has no respect, or even, it has no respect, or even the basic decency to practice any form of democratic governance in this country. So, and the other thing, of course, having hovered over the Ipod arrangement, you know the attitude of General Museveni to dialogue. And maybe not just dialogue, but how he treats his political opponents. 1, coercion. 2, cooptation. He tries to coerce you by force. And after subduing you, he says, come, let's talk. And we have made it clear that we're not going to discuss, we're not going to be on a table where somebody points a gun at you and says, let's talk. Where someone places his boot on your neck and says, now can we have a chat? No. Mandela said that, you know, it is free people who discuss. It is free men who dialogue. So for us to be able to dialogue, to have a dialogue, and I want to say, like I did mention in that letter, that NUP believes in dialogue, admires dialogue, thinks dialogue is civil and is the best thing to do. But you cannot use dialogue. And like I said, if you look at the history of General Museveni and his NRA/NRM, that's how they've always treated dialogue. You remember the Nairobi peace talks. They were in Nairobi.
You use very strong words, Mr. Rwangoya. Very strong words in your description of especially your major opponent, who is President Museveni and the ruling NRM party. My question is, you say Ipod has not done anything to expand the political space, especially for political parties over the last 10 years of its existence, but this is the period in which you have been born, grown, and taken over the leadership of parliament, and amassed the biggest number of local government positions in this country, better than other parties that have been there.
Yeah, I'll just finish my point and then I'll come to that. But like I was saying, I was talking about the Nairobi peace talks, where 4 months people are talking, they are negotiating, but the NRA is advancing. And that is what they were saying. So they used the Nairobi peace talks. Everyone else has their guards down, and they're advancing and taking Kampala and eventually taking over the country. So that is the idea. Keep you busy in dialogue while they are, crushing you. And General Museveni has not been shy to talk about this. He has talked about crushing his opponents, I don't know how many times, eating them like samosas and that kind of thing. So this is a person you're talking about dialoguing with. You've just asked me a question which I've been synthesizing about a number of times, and we have said that there are very many forms of dictatorship. If you go in constitutional studies, and you have absolute dictatorships, and then you have benevolent dictatorships, and you have hybrid regimes, and ours is that nature. Absolute dictatorships have run out of favor because, of course, of many things that happen. So what you have in most cases is a semblance of democracy, when actually underneath it is a complete military dictatorship, and that's what we have in this country.
And this semblance of democracy offers you, enables you to rise up to more than 60 members of parliament.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
On your first attempt.
That's what I'm explaining to you. When you have a hybrid regime, you have courts of law. Every once in a while, you go and win a case. But on the most fundamental things, you'll not win a case. The judiciary is under capture. But every once in a while, because the courts are there, the buildings are there, and once in a while you win a case, the regime in power is deliberate on projecting itself as a democracy. You have, the parliament. On the most serious matters of nation building or the way forward for a nation, they will never make a resolution. And you've been alive to the history of the parliament in Uganda, for example. But every once in a while, they will come up and make a resolution on this and that. So it's a facade. They try to project themselves as democratic, first of all, for many reasons. They want to get international recognition and attention. They want to get legitimacy. They want to get funding from abroad. And above all things, they want to keep in power, because otherwise, if they become an absolute outright dictatorship and ban all these institutions, they will not survive to the next day.
Let's dig into this issue of Ipod and the political parties after a very short commercial break, because each one of you has had a elaborate opportunity to present your case on what Ipod is and where we stand at the moment. When we come in the next hour, we'll be discussing the detail of how political parties can dialogue with each other in this country. We'll be right back.
NBS Frontline.
COVID is real. At first, we took it as something easy, but at least now we can feel it. I got the vaccine, first of all, to protect myself, two, to reduce on the risks that may occur when I happen to get it. I encourage teachers and other people that work in schools to be vaccinated, because the children we handle can transmit coronavirus to us. So it is always good for us to protect ourselves.
Protect yourself from COVID-19 by washing your hands with soap, wearing your mask, keeping your distance, getting vaccinated, avoiding crowds, staying at home, and avoiding shaking hands and hugging.
Be alert. Do not share your Airtel Money PIN number with anyone. Airtel Uganda employees will never ask for your Airtel Money PIN number on call, SMS, or by email. All SIM card registrations, SIM card verifications, or SIM swaps are done at clearly branded Airtel shops and not on phone. To report any fraudulent activity, please call 100 immediately. The official calling number for Airtel promotions is 0200 100 100. Stay alert on Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa only if we stay at home, observe physical distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly, or get vaccinated now.
Has your property lost its sparkle? Are your roof tiles, pavers, concrete, brick and stone in need of a fresh look? Are you preparing for a function, new tenants, or perhaps selling your property? Do you have residential or commercial property? With our state-of-the-art equipment and safe detergents, the cleaning professionals at Fresh Look